Bonjour, je suis not manly, ici le voyage d'espace, je ne sais quoi. And we have finally left the Kerbin system and we are going to Moho for episode 4. Moho is the first planet of the system, of the je ne sais quoi system. It's about 650 kilometers diameter on average, and has about the same surface gravity as the original Moho. Even so, its rotation period and orbit period, well, if you look at those numbers, they should look pretty familiar. They are the numbers for Mercury in the real-life solar system. With a significant orbital inclination, as such, delta V requirements are considerably higher. If you go at a bad inclination, you could use almost twice as much. So watch that approach. If you do manage to make it out here, however, some of the tourist highlights you will find are very short travel times, as short as 90 days, lots of different kinds of terrain, lots of beautiful peaks and mesas. And solar-powered craft can last a really long time. The problem is, well, those solar-powered craft also have very long downtimes. Of course, there's the very large delta V requirement to get out here, and it's pretty challenging to land on in this edition. A Kerbal engineer can get confused with the suicide burns, so pay attention to your descent. Getting out here required a monster that would put the Soviet UR-700 to shame. This thing sets the Kerbal factor up to 12. Just add more boosters indeed. And well, you'll see this monstrosity actually get up to low Kerbin orbit here. I'm using parts from the Making History DLC to get those tapered looking tanks. If it looks familiar, well yes, Matt Lown did a very similar design for his UR-700 creation. I'm using single tanks though and twin bore engines just to keep the part count down though. As a result, the twin bores do not generate energy. That is why the electric charge is down to 0 right now. But that's okay, we have thrust vectoring and Valentina is in firm command of this craft. Once we get up into space, we'll be able to deploy those solar panels and get our energy back up. There is a, well, not so graceful cross separation of those side boosters. I plan on keeping this one liquid fuel and oxidizer stage above because I'm going to fill it up. I'm going to use it to wind up our orbit, so we use the nuclear engines as little as we can get away with. In fact, let's take a close look at this craft here. We have a dedicated Moho lander that's going to bring Bob and Doug Kerbin down to the surface. We also have a rover design very, very similar to previous designs we've used. We're using those retractable wheels from the Making History DLC so we can get that craft to fit in the fairing, and we've got relay antennas to help keep us in contact with Kerbin. Here's the refueling craft. I bring up 3 orange tanks worth of fuel to refill the main mission craft, and well, an even less graceful separation, but that's okay. In this installation of KSP, I've got the EVA transfer pipes installed from D-Magic's Modlet set. You could either use this or Kerbal attachment system to accomplish what I'm doing. The difference here is that this keeps the two crafts separate, so you can do things like watch the delta V values, watch them increase and decrease as you need. There we go. You do need an engineer to get out there and detach and reattach those pipes. Here is another refueling craft. We're going to send this one alongside the Moho mission craft. This is the Moho refueler. And unlike the main mission craft, it's not going to need that liquid fuel and oxidizer booster there. We'll send it straightly up there on nuclear engines, because we have a much less payload there, just a probe core and some EVA transfer pipes. Not bad. Now we wind up our orbit on the main mission craft with those liquid fuel and oxidizer engines, with those twin bore engines. I didn't know what inclination to eject at, so I just went out to apoapsis. Then I planned the maneuver at periapsis there. I was using transfer window planner to get my ejection angle right. Look at that. I was pretty close there. You know, it wasn't bad. I could have pointed down a little bit more to get my inclination better, but that's okay. Once we get high enough, we detach that liquid fuel oxidizer stage there. We're a little jammed in there. Come on. Come on, get that out. There we go. Separate out that craft. That's better. then we'll bring Periapsis back up to a reasonable altitude and we will let that booster fall harmlessly into Kerbin's atmosphere. Trying to keep the space chunk down, but as you will see later, well, we had to make some sacrifices. You'll see. We were able to get an ejection out to Moho with not a bad amount of delta V. We did wind up to a good 1400 meters per second. But as you'll see on the approach, I got the inclination considerably wrong, and if I don't correct this at ejection, I'm going to have a bad time. Let's check this out. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's a pretty bad inclination there. Unless we can fix that, we're going to spend way more delta V to capture at Moho than we need to. So we'll see if we can fix that on the ejection. First, I try to adjust my ejection time. There we go. Using the Fine Maneuver Editor built into Kerbal Space Program 1.7. Not too bad. I really should cut all this stuff out. Come on. There we go. After some inclination adjustments, we get a periapsis of about 35 kilometers up. And we're going to have to correct that later anyway, but that's okay. That's not a bad ejection though, really. That plus the 1400. We did pretty good there. And there we go. And we'll do some corrections while we're still within Kerbin's sphere of influence to get that periapsis back to where we want it to be. Matt Lowndes says that inclination changes are less expensive out at apoapsis. Well, out at Kerbin, in this case, Kerbin is apoapsis, so we do our inclination fix right now. Come on. Look at that. And a much better approach inclination than what we had. As a result, this orbit insertion is going to cost much less than what the JNSQ delta V chart says. Just over 3 kilometers per second. We'll take that. We'll have delta V to spare. The refueler craft, well, now that I've got a hint from the proper ejection angle, I'm able to change my inclination around Kerbin to match. And because it takes less fuel at apoapsis, I can do the ejection with less delta V. This refueler will have a lot more extra fuel to give back to the mission craft once it reaches Moho. And there we go. As it turns out, the two craft will arrive within about 6 hours of each other. I just used that as a placeholder. I'll get rid of it. There we go. At least now we know roughly when these things are going to arrive. Here comes the main mission craft on its approach to Moho, the brown potato in space. There we go, 89 days later. Pretty short trip, actually, considering. I don't actually do the full orbit insertion here because I want to rendezvous with the refueling craft higher up, but that's okay. Since we are up this high, we'll get KerbNet up there. We'll try to find any anomalies. We see one already. Look at that. I still don't have the ScanSat parts up there, but we still have KerbNet, and we do have that RoveMate. So that'll at least give us a close idea of where that anomaly is. Looks like we'd only pick up the one, though. Bob goes up and does some space science high above Moho. There we go. He's out there getting 2 copies of the goo, the Science Junior, and the gravioli detector we have aboard there now. Yes, we have that finally. That's going to boost our science output considerably. Okay, not bad, not bad. Also, in addition to the command pod, we don't have an extra experiment storage unit on the command craft, but we do have that RCS guidance unit there, which will actually act as an experiment storage unit for us, so we don't need a separate experiment storage unit. Plus, it'll help Valentina with navigation. There's that approach to Moho. We begin our insertion burn and continue it, 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 until finally we get captured at Moho. Oh, that took a while. And we do the same kind of thing with the refueler. The The refueler also has a relay dish aboard there, so it stays in constant contact with Kerbin. There we go. And we've got the main mission craft targeted, and we find, well, we get pretty lucky on the approach. Even though we arrived 6 hours later, we're able to get a rendezvous fairly quickly. We'll do some adjustments back at the main mission craft, and then we'll have these things lined up. I've turned off one of the tanks so that when we go out to do the EVA transfer, it will leave that fuel alone. So we're going to basically empty the tanks of the refueler. Now don't do what I did and attach the pipe to one of the outer tanks. Attach it to one of the inner circle tanks, or you end up with a load balancing problem you have to fix later. EVA transfer does recognize and respect tank priorities and tanks being turned on and off, so watch where you attach that fuel hose. And there we go, with everything all balanced out, we will deorbit the refueler craft, give it a funeral on the surface of Moho. Now the main mission craft has Delta V for days. A good 59 days in fact, so we will complete our insertion and stay in low Moho orbit. And we're getting ready for our lander. We're going to send the lander down first. It has the lowest thrust to weight, and it will be less precise. We'll have an easier time with the rover than we will with this craft. We want to make sure Bob and Doug here get down safe. Here comes the part that I had been dreading. I had practiced this landing. I know that this craft can make it, but on a couple times I failed hard because I was too quick, or my horizontal speed was too high and my vertical speed was too high. I had to try to keep my vertical speed down while slowing down to try to do better. Well, you'll see in a bit. In the meantime, Doug here's just going to give Valentina a little tap on the back here. Bonk, there we go. Good luck, Doug, you're going to need it. Fortunately, he's got an Octo 2 aboard there that will help him guide that craft down to the surface. We also have Valentina and the RGS guidance unit, which will act as a control relay for probes. Here comes the descent. This is one of the hardest descents I've done. The most hardest descent I think I've done was my landing on stock Tylo. But this one comes pretty close. I thought JNSQ move was pretty tough. This thing is pretty tough. There I am watching my vertical speed, making sure it doesn't drop too much. I want to get above my landing zone. It turns out that I'm going to land just behind that mesa there. You see that peak just on the right hand side of our path. It's a nice flat area just behind there. We'll try to stick to that. Come on, Doug, you can do this. Bob's just hanging out for the ride. You make sure he stays safe. Come on, Doug, you can do this. The thrust to weight is pretty good, but I did have to watch out there. That suicide bird indicator really threw me for a loop there. At a couple points it had a negative altitude, and the countdown was counting up at times. Be careful until you get near the end of your landing when trying to land on this version of Moho. And then you should be okay. In the end, though, Doug does manage to bring this thing down to the surface of Moho safely. We're just going to do this touchdown nice and gentle-like because we have the Delta V in that bottom stage there to spare. Come on. Touchdown. There. Whoa. Come on, Doug. Get that thing back under control. Oh, KSP landing legs. Because at this point I decided, you know what, we can just rest it on top of those lower tanks. Just lower the landing gear and let it rest on the bottom. There we go. Landing legs be darned. And we are finally on the surface of Moho. Bob takes a step out first. Been a while since you've been up in space. Having come back from Minmus, there was my graceful transfer between one ladder to another. It worked. I don't know how it worked, but it worked. And then we get his brother Doug out there. He gets to plant the flag. Way to go, Bob and Doug, making it to the surface of Moho. Here comes the rover. This is very much the same design with different wheels, a few more science instruments, and the same control issues that I had on the other version of the rover. But hey, it worked. Those wheels do have twice the speed though of the other wheels, so we're able to get around Moho pretty quickly there. Much like we've done on Minmus and on the Moon, we'll keep one copy of the science readings in that experiment storage unit, and then we'll keep an extra set of readings on Bob. Again, Bob can take the data from the experiment storage unit, put it back in the experiment storage unit, and it will free up any special slots he has for EVA reports, surface samples, and rocks that he'll be picking up. We start off with the lowlands. There's only a few biomes here. We got lowlands, midlands, highlands, depressions, and poles. Only 5 biomes. Well, at least we got a decent multiplier out here, there is that. Otherwise, the same things kind of apply. We make sure we got Kerbals on there, we pick a target on the map, we hit a system check, and there we go. Not bad, 15 meters per second. Maybe with Chris on there, he could have driven a little faster, but that's okay. We want the engineer on there to fix wheels, just in case. Even though Doug's only a level 1 engineer. Up in the Highlands, nothing to speak about really. In the Midlands, we found this nice crater here, with a bit of Moho stone here. And Bob gets out his pickaxe and gets some Moho stone going. This has twice the science multiplier of Minmus, and speaking of Minmus, well, you know, we might have the Delta V for a detour, but we're not going to take that. No. Let's just get those rocks back home safe. Look at that ridge along that crater. Not bad at all. A lot of Moho's craters seem to feature a ridge like that. And then there's the depressions, which honestly were pretty depressing actually. We did get some science out here, and we do come across a couple of breaking ground surface features here. We didn't bring a scanning on the board this rover, but that's okay. We'll send Bob up to take a look. Just in case, I do have the heat values up on Kerbal Engineer. Aside from the ambient temperature of about 427 Kelvin, ouch, that's pretty toasty there. Bob is okay. Even that funny looking crater that reminds us of Tycho crater of the real life moon, that's just part of the lowlands. Again, aside from some heat, it nothing special about that. We do, however, go up to the poles, and well, good thing we added extra reaction wheels to that. There's the South Pole, and there is a lovely cliff there, but that's about it. Nothing crazy like we saw on Minmus. Eventually, we do get these guys back to the lander about 5 Kerbin days later, and come on, Doug. After his little swan dive trying to get to the experiment storage unit, he uses his jetpack more sensibly, and then drops off his experiments. There we go. And now we got, well, same problem as before. Bob is in there, but I had to stop and reload the game to bring him back. After that, we did send the rover out, but first we're going to get these guys back up to rendezvous with Valentina. The ascent was pretty easy actually. As long as we had our 1700 meters per second, we could get into low Moho without any problems. We had a bit extra on the lander part of the lander. So there we go. These twitch engines were perfect for this. It gave us a nice flat surface to land the craft with. And these are pretty efficient engines. The only thing they don't do is generate electricity, but that's okay. We got those solar panels on there. And this is Moho. You could refill the batteries with only a couple seconds. Getting a rendezvous back with Valentina was pretty easy. There we go. Yeah, 2.5 kilometers. We'll take that. We can do better though. We just get one of the nodes out there. There. Not a bad approach there. Way to go, Doug. Maybe you should be a pilot. Bob gets out the experiments, puts them aboard that probe core there. There we go. And then we send up Doug. Oh, better stop that. There we go. I do keep that lander up there as a relay satellite, but I eventually deorbit it. No point in keeping it up there once we're done. We're not going to come back to Moho anytime soon. All aboard there, Doug. Oh, we're going to miss one reading. Oh well, we have a copy of that already. While we were waiting for our transfer window back to Kerbin, we did send the rover back out there because we can relay back to Kerbin via Valentina's ship. And we finally find that anomaly. It's one of the random monoliths. I did not go looking for a Moho. I would have lost signal if I went that far north. But hey, that's okay. We get experimental aerodynamics. That's a pretty expensive tier to unlock. So hey, we'll take that. With all the surface activities done, it's time to plan our ejection back out to Kerbin. Now we have a retrograde orbit, so when I took the value from Transfer Window Planner, I basically flipped it over 180 degrees. And I got the same end result, which was good. Now we can eject these extra boosters as they run out of fuel. And there we go. Sacrificed for the good of all Kerbal kind. Now this little torchlight ship, with its one nuclear engine and ridiculously long burn times, will take us all the way back home to Kerbin. Without all the landers and rovers, it is a lot lighter craft though, so not a problem. I end up trying to fix our approach to Kerbin out at the ascending node, rather than try to fix it on ejection. There's our last exit from Moho. Even the plane change is ridiculous at over 2.5 kilometers per second, but we do have the Delta V to spare. Come on, let's fix that up. Hey, nice and flat. Only problem is it's retrograde. We'll use up the monopropellant on the command craft to fix that to be a prograde approach. About 37 kilometers seemed to work, just as it has from all the way up at Minmus. I have tested this, it was pretty safe. Wasn't too bad, actually. Here's our approach to Kerbin. There was just one problem. While this approach was successful and these guys did land and splash down safe, something happened with the graphics that you will soon see. At least we do get the benefit of a gorgeous Kerbin approach with all those clouds, and we're on the light side of Kerbin. I'm not entirely sure how that worked, but that worked. Well, of course, we're not actually slowing down. Kerbin's just dragging us along. But hey, look, watch the oceans. Where'd the oceans go? A game save and reload later, and we get that fixed up. There we go, hitting almost Mach 23 on approach. Everything falls apart except for the command craft. And we don't even exceed 5 Gs on this approach. So, if you get your approach right, you don't have to worry about too much ablator or not enough ablator, or knocking your Kerbals out. You'll be able to approach safe, even in the JNSQ system. Not bad at all. That was a pretty short trip too, just under 300 Kerbin days. We do get these guys through the atmosphere in one pass. We didn't even use up all of our ablator. Come on down, guys. Splash down! And we bring back just over 10,000 science. That actually filled out all of the stock parts except for the Rhino engine. We will take a proper look at the tech tree and pick our next destination in the next episode. Until then, I'm not Manly. Fly safe.